Welcome to the Surviving Siblings podcast. I'm your host, Maya Roffler. As a surviving sibling myself, I knew that I wanted to share my story, my brother's story. I lost my brother to a homicide in November of 2016, and after going through this experience, I knew that I wanted to share my story and his story. It's time to share your stories now. The forgotten mourners, the surviving siblings, the story that is not told enough. Season 3 of the Surviving Siblings podcast is brought to you by sibsforever.org, a virtual platform for you, the surviving sibling, to commemorate and honor your sibling relationship. Visit sibsforever.org today to create your free profile and start building beautiful commemorative web pages that can include photo and video galleries featuring you and your sibling. Now, let's dive into the episode. Welcome to the recap of Season 3. I cannot believe we are ending Season 3. This is really wild. If you had told me this a year ago, I would never have believed you that I'd be sitting here recapping Season 3 of this show. I really put out, as most of you know, Season 1 to tell my brother's story. That was the goal, and if someone connected with it, great, but it was really about remembering him and honoring him, and it was really about sharing the story with the world and sharing what he went through, and also really opening up about the truth, what really happened, because I don't sugarcoat it. I'm really open about it. My brother struggled with mental health like a lot of us do. And I think that story needs to be told. And I'm going to be sharing more and more about that actually today on the recap, because we have a lot of that in Season 3. I also wanted people to know that because he struggled with mental health, because he struggled with addiction, things like that, that wasn't how he died. And I thought that was really important to share because I couldn't openly share it for multiple reasons. If you've listened to my story, you know it was an open case for a long time. And beyond that, I wasn't really sure how family, friends, anybody would react to it. And I had to get to a place where I didn't care anymore, where it was a closed case. I didn't care. I cared more about sharing the story. I cared more about sharing about my brother and kind of giving him, a voice when he doesn't have a voice. Because, I have interviewed people on this show who have lost siblings to their addiction and to some of the things that my brother struggled with. But it's important that you tell the accurate story, because a lot of people messaged me throughout the years asking me what happened, and I could privately tell them, but this was a way for me to use my voice and say, this is what happened to him. He struggled with these other things. That doesn't mean that this should have happened to him. And I had no idea the response that I would get. And it's very bittersweet. And the reason for that is because you are happy that your story reaches someone and connects with them, because I didn't realize in telling my brother's story, really what I was telling was my story. I think I was just wanting it all to be there and to be out and to just let people know what really happened, kind of clear his name in a sense, for a lack of a better way of saying it, but also let people know that this was a really tragic, horrible thing that happened. But it's bittersweet because I'm glad I got to do that. I'm glad people responded to it. And I had zero expectations. And I think that's how you should go into a lot of things in life. That was a big life lesson for me in this journey. But on the bitter side, that's the sweeter side. The bitter side is the more people that listen, the more people that reach out, it makes me realize, although I'm thrilled at how many of you are listening, we've topped the charts multiple times, which is incredible, and thank you. But that's the bitter side, because I realize that there's so many of us out there, so many siblings that have lost a sibling or siblings, which we talked about this season. And I think it really opened my eyes up to the fact that I'm not alone. We are forgotten about. We are the forgotten mourners for a reason, but we're not alone. And so I've continued to create community around this, and we're we're going to continue going. So I just want to thank each and every one of you for listening, because the listeners are what makes this happen. And again, those of you who are supporting us in additional ways, that's what's going to help continue season 4 and beyond. Those of you who visit our website, buy our journal, which I'll talk about in a minute, support us through donating, support us through buying our merch like I have on always. And we even have, private support groups and things like that now, which again, I'll dive into in a little bit, but I want to make sure we recap all of this. And I want to thank every single one of you that has supported us in some way, even if it's just subscribing, liking, and sharing and listening. That means the world. We couldn't do it without listeners. So thank you. But before we go on, I've got to thank the people that made this season possible. Besides all of you, our incredible listeners, I had some incredible sponsors, and I have some incredible sponsors this season, and some are returning, and we had one new one. I couldn't have done it without them. So first and foremost, I want to thank Audrey Cropin. Audrey is the founder of sibsforever.org. Unless you've been under a rock, you've probably heard it at the beginning of every single episode in season 3. She chose to sponsor the whole season. We could not have done it without you, Audrey. Without sibsforever.org, this season would not be possible. So I want to thank you, and I want to encourage every single surviving sibling listening to this to go over to sibsforever.org and join if you haven't already. I am on there. And if you're not really familiar, even in our intros, we talk about it, I will tell you exactly what it is. So it's a commemorative page that is completely secure, because Audrey is a tech whiz. She's a tech subject matter expert, and she knows how to create a secure site. And what's really beautiful about this site is it's siblings sharing memories, videos, photos, commemorating, just notes, different things you want to put in there, because let's face it, everything is digital now, right, guys? It's digital. So this is a beautiful way, regardless of when your sibling passed, whether it was yesterday or if it was 20, 30 years ago, to put all of this in a digital space that's actually safe. Facebook, Instagram, all these other places are fabulous connection tools, but it's not a safe place to keep stuff because you don't own your own data. So we won't go on a tech journey here, but I highly encourage you to do it. And here's the other part of this that I love is you can keep it totally private. You can keep it just for yourself. So you can go in there, write memories down when they come to you, whatever it is that you want to do, upload a photo when you find it. Or you can share it with selected family members. Like, say you want to share it with your sister because you feel like that's a safe space, or with your mom or your dad or the whole family. You can share it with them. Or you can share it with the entire sibsforever.org community. And that is, for me, that's what I'm doing, because I think it's amazing and you connect with more siblings. But I know that we're all at different points in our journey. So just wanted to point that out. And I want to thank Audrey from the bottom of my heart. Audrey, we could not have done this without you. Thank you. Thank you for everything that you're doing. And she has another project coming up as well that I think you guys will find immensely helpful as well, which we'll talk about when we get into episode 1, recapping the season. 2 more people I want to thank. Could not have done it without them. Thank you. We had a returning sponsor. If you're watching this on video, you can see the book. Opening Up to Grief. So Janice Jernigan is the author of Opening Up to Grief. When I first saw this book and we connected, I knew already we were going to connect. Little did I know we're both Georgia girls. And but there's a sunflower on the cover of her book. And if you've listened to my story, you know that sunflowers are a connection to my brother. I have a tattoo of one. And there was so much there. And so I was so thrilled she came back this season. Janice, I want to thank you for sponsoring your episode. And if you guys want the book, I highly recommend it, especially if you're trying to connect with someone, or you are someone who lost a sibling at a very young age. She lost her sibling when she was quite young. So I would check it out. It's on Amazon, but it's also right on our website. And we appreciate if you go through our website to get it at thesurvivingsiblings.com. All these links will be in the show notes. And last but definitely not least was our new sponsor this season, Nikki Wise Neff. Nikki, we want to thank you so much. It has been an incredible experience working with you. And just so you guys know, Nikki founded shaitada.org. Shaitada is an incredible nonprofit that she has launched. I'm so proud of her. And the reason we connected is homicide, obviously. If you go to the site, you'll see that. But she supports families from all different backgrounds going through loss. And there's so many different resources on shaitata.org. Nikki, thank you again for being a first-time sponsor and supporting us and also sharing your story, which we'll get into in the recap. So thank you again to all of our sponsors. We couldn't do it without you. And thank you again to all of my incredible surviving siblings. Keep on surviving, guys. Let's get into the recap. So in my recaps, I like to talk about the season overall, what connected me to certain guests, why they were on. We did a lot of research and we really wanted to hear from all of you after season 2. What did we miss? What did you guys want to hear? What did you want to talk about? What did our guests want to talk about? Things like that. And I do feel like this season was a little bit heavy, and I'm cool with it. I'm happy with it because these are definitely things that needed to be talked about. We had a lot of requests for multi-sibling loss, which we covered in more than one episode. We had a lot of requests for siblings dying by suicide, which we covered in more than one episode. And we had a lot of requests for fentanyl and overdose, and we covered that in more than one episode. And so going into season 4, God willing, we are going to cover more difficult topics that I've gotten requests about. So if you have requests, let us know. But I think this is a very special season because this was your feedback and this is what you guys wanted to talk about. So the first person I had on was Audrey, our incredible season sponsor. And we both felt like it was important for her to come back and share more about because she was on season 2 episodes, sharing about the loss of her sister and then sharing about the loss of her grandson who has a twin sister. But we really wanted to dive more into that part of the story this time and where she's at now, and then also really talk about Sibs Forever and her future project, which is going to be an online resource that creates specific resources. And I'm not a subject matter expert like her, but stay tuned for it. And it's in the show notes of episode 1. I absolutely loved having Audrey back. I do feel like out of all her episodes, we both agreed this was her rock star episode. And I'm excited because I'm announcing this through this, but also I'll be announcing this on social media. I'll be meeting her at one of the conferences I'll be speaking at this year, which is incredible. So I hope to see some of you guys there. I am hitting the road in July. Can't wait to see some of you guys and meet you guys in person. But Audrey and I will both be at the USA Bereaved Parents Conference. That happens towards the end of July. And it is in DC. So really excited near the airport. So really excited to see her. And again, Audrey, thank you for supporting the season. I think she's also connected with other grandmothers in this experience. I think it's a beautiful thing to build this community. Again, if you haven't been to sibsforever.org, check it out. Can't wait to see you there. So Maggie's episode, which was the second episode of the season, I think was a really important episode because this was losing a sibling by suicide. And this is something that has been kind of avoided, not talked about. Sometimes people don't want to be open and share that. There's a lot of shame behind it. And I think what's really beautiful about Maggie's episode is she kind of takes that away. I feel that way personally, at least. She takes that shame away and we can be open and honest about it to the extent that you feel comfortable. And I think that's the beauty in her episode. And she will also be at a conference that I'll be speaking at in Denver in early July. So cannot wait to meet you in person, Maggie. And if you guys are patrons, you'll get to see behind the scenes stuff and video. It's going to be really exciting. Episode 3 is, of course, Miss Janice. She comes back. I already talked about this a little bit, but she comes back on and we really dissect her book. We go through it. Again, I feel like this was another incredible returning guest that broke down everything that was in the book. I had specific questions for her. I had read the book in detail at that point and thoroughly enjoyed it. So that for me was one of my favorite interviews this season. I loved them all. We had a new guest on episode 4, Judy Lipson. She's the author of Celebration of Sisters. So that was another request that we got. multi-loss because she lost two sisters, but also sisters. There's not a lot of books. We realize this, and we talk about this in episode 4. There's not a lot of books about sisters losing sisters. I mean, they're not non-existent, but like that, this book was really and is really beautiful, and I encourage you to check it out as well. Celebration of Sisters is Judy really, she'll also be at a conference as well. So I'm meeting all these incredible people in person. I'm so excited, and excited for all my patrons to see the behind the scenes of it. It'll be really exciting. But I loved her story because she lost her sisters in two different ways, one in an accident and one to anorexia and bulimia. So here we are tackling another important topic, anorexia and bulimia, which we hadn't really talked about. And I'm really glad that we did, because quite a few of you connected with that story. And Judy's such a wonderful, open, warm-hearted speaker that it was a wonderful story. Our episode 5, so making it halfway through the season, Nikki Wise Neff, who I talked about already, she is the founder of shaitada.org. Please go visit the site and support her. It's a new nonprofit. We all know how hard it is to start any new business, especially nonprofits. And I think really the powerful part of her story is the multi-loss and the different complications in her family dynamic. And that's something I get asked about all the time, like when I'm live on Instagram or TikTok. You guys always have unique family dynamics. And that's something we're going to talk about more in season 4. Like, I'm going to do a dedicated episode. I've already gotten the requests. I hear you. You got it. But Nikki's story is definitely woven with a lot of sadness, darkness, but then I'm proud of her for coming out and creating Shaitada on the other side. And that's really our goal with every single one of these guests that come on. And so if it's something that you're thinking about doing, applying to the show, coming on to the show, or sharing your story in general, I think the best for me, the best advice and the best time to do it is when you feel like you've come to a place of hope, or you've come to a place where you're able to give back, or you've come to a place where you're, I don't want to say acceptance, because as you learn through my episodes and through my journey, acceptance isn't really the goal, because you'll grieve for life and you'll feel all these different, the stages or these emotions for the rest of your life. So acknowledgement is really where you want to be, and you can't force yourself towards that. And I think with Nikki's story and so many of these other people that have come on the show this season and last season, there's an element of hope. You're on another side of grief. And it doesn't mean that we don't grieve, but it means that we're in a place now where we have an outlet for our grief. And I think that's really important for people to hear, because we're all thinking, when we don't have the knowledge, or maybe we haven't done therapy or gotten in groups or even support or just met the right people, because I was clueless about this. I was the same way. I wanted to force myself to acceptance. I was like, okay, I gotta accept this. I gotta make sure. No, when I got to a place of acknowledgement, that's when I was ready to read these books, open my heart, share my story. And I really just thought I was sharing my brother's story, but I was actually sharing my story as a surviving sibling. And I think there's a lot of gifts in that. I really do. And I wish someone had told me what I'm going to tell you now. Don't push yourself, don't force yourself, and don't rush yourself, because doing that is going to make you, air quotes, make you feel like you have to be in a place that you probably aren't. For example, if you're in anger, if you're in this anger phase and you feel stuck, which we talk about in my journal, which I'll show you in just a little bit, it's a feeling of being stuck. And I talk about an exercise about how to get unstuck. I was very much stuck in anger, which is why I use this example. But I feel like if you're just like, okay, I'm going to push myself to like acceptance, you're not going to fully work through all the emotions, all the feelings, all the thoughts, all the answers you need, XYZ, all of that stuff. You won't process it in the way that you need to process it. And all of us are unique. So I feel like if you're pushing yourself towards acceptance and you feel stuck, ask yourself why you feel stuck. Because you could be feeling stuck just because you're forcing yourself out of something that you need to feel, whether that's depression, sadness, anger, whatever it is, bargaining, whatever shock, let yourself feel it. And that's really hard for us. And it was hard for me too. But I wish someone had told me that because I was putting so much pressure on myself. So little commercial break there. So Nikki's episode is great for that. Again, visit shaitana.org. It's a great resource for those of you that need support as a family for not just homicide, but she also supports suicide, other accidents, all those things. She's a great resource. So speaking of doing things, in episode 6, I had Chelsea McHale on. Chelsea is wonderful. She has created a local chapter in her area for siblings, but she lost her brother to an accident on, a mountain and climbing. And the things that she's done, getting signs put up, she's advocating for him all these years later, that was truly inspirational for me to hear that and to hear that story. And I've connected with her on a deep level, as I do with almost all of my guests. And I really admire her for that. It takes a lot of tenacity to put signs up and make change around where her brother died and let people know about the dangers of doing what he did. He was a little bit of a daredevil, and I relate to that with my brother. And so again, I commend her for that. And if you've lost someone to a sudden accident or something like that, I think you'll really connect with her story. Or if you're wanting to advocate for something on behalf of your sibling, those are two things that I think you'll connect with so much. And she has complicated family dynamics as well. Episode 7 is Miss Angela Cush. So Angela lost 3 of her siblings. This is a multi-loss story. It's kind of got it all, but we do really focus on the fentanyl epidemic in her episode because that's how she lost her most recent sibling, Cindy. And that was requested. You guys wanted to talk about it, and I agree 150%. It is an epidemic. It needs to be talked about, and we pull the veil back on that. And you will see some content warnings on some of the episodes, like Nikki's and Angela, because we're open and we share everything. So we just like you to be mindful. And that's always been important for me, even since season 1, that I give you that trigger warning or that warning that, hey, this could be a little triggering. If you're not in the place for this yet, that's okay. But these resources and episodes do exist. Episode 8 is Miss Aletha. So Aletha, her episode is grieving as a young surviving sibling. And she really tells an interesting story because that was something that was requested as well, which is why Janice came back as well. And then Aletha gives a different perspective on the loss of her brother. She was only 9. So we're dealing with a different age group, but that's extremely young. And she talks about the things that her and her father do in a positive way and how that connected them in their relationship. I think this is a fabulous episode for if you're listening to this as a parent, or if you're listening to this as someone who is young as well and lost young, this is the episode for you. It really is. I love Aletha's positivity, and it's so many years later in retrospect compared to her life, right? And I love the things that she shares, and I think it's the episode to listen to if you've lost at a young age where you have a lot of memory of it. Janice's is definitely a must listen as well, and read the book. But Aletha, I think, if you're younger and you've lost someone and you lost them quite young, you're going to connect with her story. I connected with it, and I lost my brother at 30. So again, I think we take something from each story. Episode 9 was also about a sudden accident. I had Rachel Woodruff on, and Rachel is incredible. She is a facilitator right here locally. It's not often I get to interview someone locally, but she is local, and she's the facilitator for the sibling group for the Compassionate Friends. Everybody knows about Compassionate Friends. It's one of the biggest organizations for not just bereaved parents, but siblings, grandparents, all that, bittersweet stuff we talk about. And she came on and shared her story. It had just been just over 20 years since the passing of her brother Aaron. And I think, again, anybody who's lost someone to an accident and anybody who wants to understand what it's like 2 decades into your grief journey, she's fabulous. And she talks a lot about not understanding acceptance, more acknowledgement, which I've had more than one guest talk about it, but her episode did phenomenally well because people really connected with that. And she's in a space where, I mean, I facilitate things myself, and I think she's one of the best facilitators I've ever seen because the topics we talk about are not easy. And managing people in a group like that, when somebody's maybe day one into their grief journey and others are like her 20 years, 10 years, wherever, some people can listen to something, some people can't. So again, just blown away by her, and she was a favorite. And last but definitely not least was our episode 10, our only guy again. So please tell me if you guys have an opinion about this. But Preston and I talk about it. So Preston Zeller, The Art of Grieving, he actually has a documentary. It's in the show notes if you go listen. But he decided to create, he lost his brother, and he decided to create artwork for him because he's an artist. And he committed to 365 days, a full year. He was going to create a piece of art for him. And that's what the documentary is about. But I think what goes really deep for Preston's episode is a couple of things. One, he talks about like the power of doing art and having an outlet. And I think that's why him and I connected, definitely, because this is my outlet and I didn't even know it. But for him, he was already an artist, and then he made this commitment, and that it's interesting to hear him talk about that was a big feat. Like, that was a big commitment. And he did it. And the documentary shows it. But he talks about the power of having an outlet, which is kind of the theme of my recap, and the power of art. I'm definitely not an artist. I mean, I was an okay drawer when I was young. My brother was a much more talented artist, which probably was my connection to Preston when he first when he had sent me the documentary, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is perfect." But there's another side to this because Preston is the only man again on this season, right? Last season we had Caleb, who's a dear friend of mine, but it brought the question up about men and grief. Why is it that each season so far, have been inundated by messages from incredible women, but very few to none men? Like, men were not applying to be on the show. And Preston and I do tackle that. And there's some quotes, if you follow us on TikTok or Instagram, you'll see him in those shorts. And I encourage you to listen to the episode, especially if you've got a guy in your life that's struggling with grief. This can become a little more generalized, this episode, because he explains why men don't openly grieve or grieve in the same way that women do. And I completely agree with him because of societal norms. I think he's 150% right. And those are really interesting topics. And then also hearing, on about his brother, and his brother served, and his brother's name is Colin, and obviously went through some trauma because of that, and, did not fare very well when he came back after going through so much. And so I really related to Preston in that. And I relate to everybody that's been on the show that has had siblings that have struggled with different things. And I think that's very relatable. And then these particular guests that came on that have these incredible relationships with their siblings, and then it's an accident or something happened. Like, there's something for everyone in every episode. So that's my recap for the season. Again, the topics, talking about suicide, talking about overdose, talking about fentanyl, talking about all these different things, men in grief, like these different topics. We conquered it. We talked about it. We're going to keep talking about it, though, because one story is not enough. So I definitely want to hear from all of you and hear what your thoughts are about what we should talk about next. Some topics that I already know we're going to tackle are domestic violence. It's been scattered in, but we need to talk about it. It's a real problem, as we all know. Another thing we want to talk about is the family dynamics, but we're going to take it a step further and talk about how to deal with that and some examples. So I want to hear from all of you. Please let us know. You can message me on any social media platform or right through the website, thesurvivingsiblings.com, or email me, Maya at thesurvivingsiblings.com, and I'll have this all in the show notes. So now, where am I in my grief journey? That's a really good question, right? Where is Maya in her grief journey? Great question. So, when I started this show in March of 2022, I had a lot of emotions, a lot of different feelings. I thought if one person listened to it, two people listened to it, I didn't know. Had no idea this was going to happen. And as this evolved, I went through season 2 and heard more stories. And then this season was very, very intense. Like I said, there were a lot of intense topics talked about, but I connected with each and every person. And again, it's just so happy that you guys are connecting with it as well, because it's meant to help and it's meant to give you hope. But for me personally, I did have some issues that came up this year. Year 5 hit me really hard. Year 6 was different for me because I felt like I was giving back. I felt like I was giving to the community by the time that 6th anniversary came up on November 21st in 2022. And I still go down to the creek. I still bring my brother his champagne and his pizza, but I felt this time very different going down to the creek, going down and sitting there and bringing him sunflowers and eating pizza and drinking some champagne and remembering my brother. It was a different feeling, a different feeling. And the reason for that, I think, is because I felt lighter because I had told his story and people knew the truth. I told my story, which I didn't realize how important that was. And I felt like I was doing something. This makes me emotional. Oh, God. I felt like I was doing something, regardless of how certain family members of mine feel. I get asked this question a lot, so I'm actually going to answer it on this episode. How does my family feel about the show and how do they feel about what I'm doing? I know for a fact that there are people in my family that don't like it, so much so that they wanted to take some action against it, which really hurt my heart when I first heard that, because I did this to help others, continued it to help others. The first and foremost reason I did it was to remember my brother, which makes my heart hurt even more, because why wouldn't we want to commemorate him? Why wouldn't we want to tell his story? And the truth is the truth. The truth should be out there. I'm a truth seeker. I've always been a truth seeker, and I think it's important. So it definitely changed family dynamics for me. As most of you know, I went no contact with almost my entire family. By the time, uh, I mean, it was pretty much right after, if you've listened to my story, my brother died. My youngest sister, she was the last one I went no contact with, and she's the first one that I let back in my life. So, um, because she's 10 years younger than me, and that experience is her experience, but to lose your brother at 20 to a homicide was probably different than my experience. That's why I think it's so important that we have these amazing guests on that talk about their story, losing at a young age. It's just different. And she's also going to experience something that a lot of you talk about, where she's going to turn the same age that he was when he died. I'm never going to have that experience. I have always been 3 years older than him to the day, as most of you know. So I am able to come to a place now, and people ask me about this all the time. They're like, how can you do this? But I'm going to talk about it right now very openly. How did I get to a place where I accepted every single person in my family and where they are in their grief journey? How? How am I not angry? How am I not, here's the thing. Once I was at year 5, things really changed for me. I started reading so many books. I started this podcast. It came out, a little after year 5, but that's when I started recording it, started telling the story. And I had a lot of epiphanies, and I realized that if just because I'm grieving this way doesn't mean that everybody else has to grieve the same way. They don't. But it also doesn't mean that I have to agree with how they're grieving, and it doesn't mean that I have to allow them in my life. What it does mean, though, is that this is where I think acceptance is a thing. I grew to accept it. That's who they are. That's where they are in their grief journey, or lack of a grief journey, because I do feel like half of my family has not, and when I say family, I'm talking about like mom, dad, my 2 sisters. I feel like half of them have not grieved, and the other half of us have, and then there's, a journey for another person in there. And I feel zero regret about doing this show. I am just getting started, and I want to help other siblings. That's my goal now. I see that there's a need for that, and I'm here to tell you that there is light on the other side. You can come out on the other side. There is hope. It doesn't mean that you're not going to miss them every day, because you get emotional still. It doesn't mean that you're not going to think about them at some point, probably every day, but it changes and evolves. But I came to a place of acceptance with this, because I realized that for me, I could allow family members back into my life that could accept where I was, where it was a two-way street, where they could accept the fact that I'm doing this show. I told my brother's story. I fought for justice for him. I'll still continue to fight for all of you, because there's only so much I could do in my story. But those are the people that are allowed in. The other ones I have to love from afar. And often people will ask me then, so I'll just go ahead and answer your questions. Who are those people? So I've been pretty open about my relationship with my father and how it's evolved, and how I spoke to him for a little bit. As you know from season 1, he was kind of the only one in the family that was a rock for me. And in finding out that he was the one also calling the detective and trying to find out what happened, and trying and trying and trying, that opened me back up to a relationship with him. So my father and I do have a relationship. We do talk. It's been extremely cathartic. I'm really happy about it. Makes me emotional. And I'm going to go see him. And I haven't seen him since my brother was killed. And I'm going to go see him and his life. And I've never done that because he lives in Africa. So we'll update you on that. And if you follow me on my social media, I'm sure you'll see it. But this is an evolution for me. This was a big deal. And so when people say to me often, they're like, oh my God, I hate my mother. I hate my father. I can't believe they did this. I can't believe they did that. Look, I'm not telling you have to have them in your life, because I'm still no contact with my mother, and I don't see that changing anytime soon, but she's still my mother, and I do love her. That has come a long way in 6.5 years. I do love her, but I can't have her in my life because of where I'm at right now. Never say never. That is a huge quote for me, because you just never know. I never knew that this would be a connection with my father and I would be able to move forward with him. I am completely thrilled at the depth of the relationship that I've been able to continue with my youngest sister. And, she's not just my youngest sister. She's like a child to me. She's my child in a lot of ways. I didn't birth her, but I'm like a second mom. I'm like, someone that was in her life. And it was very painful. That's why she was the last and then the first. But it's very painful to have to kind of put that boundary up. But sometimes, this is my point of sharing this with you, other than I share everything at this point. My point is, sometimes going no contact, sometimes putting up boundaries, you will find, and I say sometimes only because you need to do it appropriately and not in a toxic way, like, screw you, I'm done with you, or what. No, it needs to be like done. As I've shared before on season 1, I wrote my mother messages when I was in LA filming the reunion for the show I was on, telling her, like, I love you. I will always love you. Unfortunately, there were other conversations that happened after that I did not want to happen via phone, but I tried to go no contact in that way. And that's what I would recommend. Sometimes it's hard because people don't want that, but if you feel like you can't have this person in your life, there's a reason for that. And if it's precluding you or preventing you from moving forward or processing in your own way, and if there's judgment and it isn't all love, that's my big revelation from this. Because if these people are meant to be in your life, like my sister and my father, I know I'm very comfortable and happy with the relationship I have with them. And that makes me feel good. The relationship should make you feel good. Even though you're so sad. And none of my relationships made me feel good at a certain point. So I cut them all off. And in doing that, I'm bringing back in the positivity and leaving the negativity out. And it's not easy to do. It's, I'm 36 now, and these past 6 years have been very eventful, obviously. Losing my brother, going through creating my own businesses, going through a pandemic. We've all gone through so much. For me, I'm walking away realizing, like, it was lonely. A lot of my 30s has been lonely because of the loss, because of the pandemic, because of building my own businesses. These are all very lonely things to do and to go through. And once you prove to yourself, like, I already knew this from being so independent since I left home at 17, but once you prove to yourself that you don't need anyone and that you got this, you can bring the people back into your life. When I'm talking more about family, but if there were people that you needed to go no contact, needed a refresher, you will see much clearer because you've enjoyed being by yourself. I love being by myself. And that was a gift that came out of this loss. That was a gift that came out of the pandemic. It was a gift that came out of a lot of betrayal. And although if someone were to ask me, would you like to have your brother back or would you like to feel like this? I mean, come on. We all know the answer. Of course, you want your loved one back. But I'm in a place now, 6.5 years in, where I've realized that this has happened. Some people tell me, oh, you've come to acceptance. I don't believe that, because there's some days where I wake up and I still don't feel like it's real. But it's not every day. It's not like in the beginning. But I do feel that this, being lonely or being alone a lot and learning to love being by myself, because I loved being by myself in my 20s, but I traveled so much. So you're alone, but you're surrounded by chaos all the time. This, I was in, like, alone. I had no idea about support groups. I had no idea that there were people out there, like, alone in this, and then also no family support. So it made me see what is healthy and what is not healthy for me. And that's something I open up and give advice about all the time. I'm not a therapist. I'll never claim to be one, and I would never like to be one. But I think you can learn the most from people who have been through what you've been through. And that's why I'm continuing to tell your stories and continuing to openly share mine. So, yep, I'm going to go be with my sister and spend time with her this summer. And, I'm seeing the family members that I see, because I'm such a giver. And I often get people listening to this show, watching my TikToks, watching my Instagram, that reach out to me and would love to hear from you. I answer every single message. They're givers. They're givers. And givers tend to be, like, take forgotten mourners to another step. You are a surviving sibling. You've lost a sibling or siblings, and then you're the giver or you're the fixer in the family. Yeah, raising my hand over here, because you get lost even more, because parents, friends, family, they think, oh, she's got it, he's got it. They're so strong. They're so strong. The reality is that, what choice do you have? And that's where I got in my story. And it really annoyed me. And it does a little bit now, but not as much. When people would say, oh, she's so strong. She's so strong. Oh, but she's so strong. She'll be fine. Like, I am human. You are human. Just because I'm strong and I'm resilient doesn't mean that I don't break down. I don't cry. I don't have hard times and that I don't have feelings. And so I really want to validate that. And that's one of the reasons I also, as I'm giving my recap here, took the journal. A lot of you guys actually bought the digital copy of this, but the grief guide, if you can see it, yeah, you can see it. The grief guide for surviving siblings, I actually turned this into a journal, flipping the page. If you're watching on video, but I turned it into a 100-page journal with some incredible prompts. And this is something that I wish that I had had. And you can buy this on Amazon now. I'm going to be signing these at the different conferences, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. But I give basically an overview. And the things I go over in this are the validation exercise, really validating where you are in your experience, because what I was just talking about made me remember this because I didn't feel validated. I didn't feel like I had a place where I could talk about that. So I asked very simplistic questions, but it's to get you validating your grief, get you validating that this loss was significant for you because it is significant. And I go through the 5 stages of grief, but I call it What's Up with the 5 stages of grief, and kind of give my own take on it, because you may never experience one and you may stay stuck in one for a really long time. So as we're flipping through here, like, that's something, and there's beautiful pictures that go with it. And I talk about my opinion, which is my other brand, by the way, but I talk about that. And I talk about, you know, write about your depression. Okay, you never went through shock. Cool. Like, let's talk about, where you're at, and you can come back to this. That's what I really love about it. I also do a grief timeline, which for me, I wish I had this, and I kind of did it on my own. So the first year I go month by month, and then I go year by year, and you can continue this yourself. I go to 10 years. And then the last exercise is probably my favorite. It's called Getting Unstuck. And I was stuck. I was definitely stuck. So here's the book for you. But I was stuck in anger, as I've talked about many, many times. And I feel like we all get stuck in a certain emotion, feeling, stage, whatever you want to call it. And so in that exercise, I go through that and explain it. And then, kind of trickle throughout the journal are just my personal experiences and advice. So I'm so excited to have that on Amazon and available for you guys. Some of you have already ordered it. Thank you so much. I do giveaways where I sign it and send it out. And we'll have it at some of the conferences I'm going to. So that's been a part of my grief journey as well. Again, I did not think I'd be sitting here talking to you about this, and I'm so honored and humbled to be doing so. But I've decided I was going to do 3, but I think I'm just doing the 2. There are 2 conferences. A lot of you guys know about the Compassionate Friends Conference. I'll be there in July, the very first week of July. And I'm going to be facilitating a group on homicide, but I'm also going to be doing a talk and a workshop on moving forward as a surviving family, which is a talk I've done before, but never in like an in-person workshop. So a couple other things I'll be doing there, but really excited about those two things, and honored to facilitate a homicide support group. It is a different type of loss, and I understand it quite well. And then at the end of July, I'll be at the Bereaved Parents USA conference. That's going to be in DC. Would love to see you there as well. I'm doing a very similar talk there, moving forward as a surviving family. I do have a focus on siblings, though, doing a facilitation group there as well, and a couple other things too. So kind of similar, but more sibling focus probably in DC, and a little more generalized in some ways in Denver. But if you guys have any questions about the conferences, I will put those links in the show notes, and I would love to see you there. If you're going to come, let me know. Really excited to be speaking and to be the voice for siblings. Really excited to do that. Again, last year I did some talks for nonprofits. I did some talks for couple of people have asked me to for groups about sibling loss, but everything was still pretty virtual last year. As I know, I run events as my full-time business, and it's changing now. So I'm really excited to be back in person. I'm excited to connect with people in person. And if you're going to be there, I cannot wait to see you. So to wrap kind of where I'm up right now, I still have hard days, guys. I still have hard days. Um, and people ask me all the time, like, how do you get through the hard days? How do you um, continue to move forward? We don't move on. As I always say, this shirt is coming, I promise. We don't move on, but we move forward. So we are creating a shirt with that because that's kind of my tagline now, besides keep on surviving by surviving siblings. But I do feel that in those tough days, the difference is I allow myself to feel it now. Like I lean into it. And I used to wonder what people meant by that. Like, what do they mean by allow yourself to feel it? Or what do they mean by like leaning in? Like, what does that even mean? I understand it now. So it doesn't mean that you allow yourself to not get out of bed for weeks at a time. It doesn't mean that you allow yourself to do something that could be harmful to yourself or others. Doesn't mean that you get to drink too much or, take more medication or whatever, unless it's doctor prescribed, of course. Just things like that, right? Destructive behavior. But it does mean that if you wake up one day and you're having a really difficult day and like it's a Saturday, or say it's your day off, or say it's a light work day, like let yourself feel it. And what that means is I feel as humans automatically want to find a way to shove it aside. Whatever that process is for you, everybody's different. Some people might go get their, you know, cup of coffee. Some people might just sleep the day away. Some people might just go exercise, which is a great thing. That's a positive. But for me, what was a game changer was not distracting myself and actually allowing myself to like go sit outside, feel it, sit with that thought, sit with that feeling. And sometimes it is so painful, but allowing myself to feel that and give that space, but not let it overcome me and overtake me has been a game changer because it allows me to remember and acknowledge, yes, my brother is not physically in this world anymore. See, it makes me emotional. He's not physically in this world anymore. I do have some spiritual beliefs that, I do think there's an afterlife and I do think he's there and I do feel him and I see signs. And we've talked about that many times before on episodes. But I think that for me is the big difference. And then it's interesting because we're so afraid of pain. And I don't wish pain on anybody. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Not that I have one, but I wouldn't. But we're so scared, I think, as humans of like pain because we're afraid it's going to drag us down. And guess what? It does sometimes. It really does. But what will keep you from moving forward, not moving on, because you're always going to have this person with you in whatever you believe, but in capacity, right? Because you thought this person was coming with you through most of your life. But what holds us back, this is my big revelation for this recap and doing all of this in 6.5 years, is not allowing ourselves to feel, whether that's sad, whether that's angry, whether that's mad, and even the positive feelings. Like a lot of you share with me that you feel guilty when you're happy or when a happy occasion happens or something like that. And I remember feeling that too. I never wanted to allow myself to feel fully happy. And that didn't change for years. And there's still a little bit of that in me, like where I don't feel like I can be completely happy because this really traumatic thing happened. And I no longer have my brother physically present in this world. And I saw a lot of crap. Like I saw a lot of stuff. It was awful. So it sounds simple, but it's not. And it's also not hard. It's just that we're afraid of it. And once I allowed myself to feel and I'm reading even more books, excited to bring more authors on to the next season. But as I read them, I also keep myself in check, because it doesn't mean that you need to go into like the depths of despair. You don't need to create that feeling. If I'm in having a day where I'm in a great headspace, like those are the days that I tend to read the books of someone like Janice and, all these people that have been on the show. But if I'm not in a good headspace and I know that I've got to let myself feel it that day, and just, it's probably not the best day for me to read one of those books. On the flip side, sometimes I want to connect with somebody, so I will read something that I know will connect me to that, or I'll go live and connect with you guys, or on TikTok or Instagram. And I think knowing yourself and how you can feel it in a healthy way is really important. And I think a lot of us numb, and numb to a point where we don't allow ourselves to feel it because it's scary. It's really scary to feel it. But there is a feeling on the other side. Like, I'm talking to you right now and I feel like in my heart the pain. But as I'm talking to you, I feel like I'm walking kind of over this hill and the other side. And it doesn't mean there won't be another hill another day, or another time, maybe even today, where there's a hill. But like, as I'm sharing this, the pain will always be there, but I feel a sense of relief because I'm sharing with you to feel it. I'm allowing myself to feel this pain, and allowing myself to share my brother's story, my story, and all of your stories. There's pain that I feel every single time, but there's also there's no other way to really say it other than this kind of release or relief, because that pain reminds me. It reminds me that my brother was in Israel. My love still exists. And when I was doing things to numb that pain, whether it was drinking, a lot in the early times, which I've shared, or taking medication, even prescribed by my doctors, but it was just too heavy for me and I needed to change the things I've shared in season 1. I needed to feel it. And feeling it makes me feel alive, makes me remember that my brother was alive on this earth for 27 years and still lives with me in some capacities. I believe that. And it's allowed me to move forward. When you don't allow yourself to feel something, you can't move forward. And I'm not saying that it's not okay to have a day in bed and be sad. It's totally fine. It's okay to Netflix and chill and watch your favorite shows. It's okay. But when it's taking you over, especially in the early years, it is normal. But don't ignore it and ask for help. Listen to our show. Join our groups. There's people out there that can support you. And I wish I had known that, because I didn't want to leave bed for a long time. I didn't want to go out into the world. I couldn't believe the world was still spinning and still happening. Couldn't believe it. So those are my big revelations. We talk about this in episode 2 as well, like giving yourself grace. What does that mean? It's giving yourself grace is actually kind of a boundary, because giving yourself grace doesn't mean that you get to lay in bed for weeks at a time and not care for yourself, care for your children, care for your life, your job, any of that. But on the flip side, giving yourself grace does mean that when this happens, yeah, you can lay on the couch or lay in bed and be sad. Yes, you can cry. Yes, you can, it's finding that balance, allowing yourself to feel, allowing yourself to, if you can't function that day, you can't function that day, but being honest about it and more open about it. I think that comes with time, and giving ourselves permission to grieve. That's on that side. But when you're on the other side, you can't be afraid to ask for help. That's giving yourself grace there, or, really helping you process, like, oh my God, I can't get out of bed for 2-3 weeks. Like, I need help. So when you're allowing yourself to feel, you'll know that because you know yourself. So those are my big revelations. I'm happy to talk about the evolution of my family dynamic too. I think I could look at it two different ways, right? I could look at it as I wish this death had brought our family together, but it didn't. But for me, it's important to put yourself first. Um, Especially the types that listen to the show. I know you guys are like me, you're givers, and you've got to put yourself first. And I choose to see the positive because, like so many of us say, what choice do I have? Like when people tell us, oh, you're so strong, what choice do I have? I'm either going to curl up in a ball and just wither away. I don't know. Or I'm going to let myself feel. I'm going to find ways to move forward. I'm going to find ways to give back, whatever that means for you. We're all different, but I can definitely share my experience. And I could get really caught in the fact that, no, my family is not this cohesive unit. And, this didn't bring us all closer together. But in some ways, it's shown me what's positive and what's toxic in my life. And I'm I'm in a place right now where never say never. I love everyone in my family. Some I love from afar, some can be in my life intimately, and I'm very happy with that. And those are the big things that I have realized. And going down to that creek and feeling like I could give something back to my brother and not feeling like I was failing him anymore. Sometimes I still feel like I failed him, which is a whole other episode. It'll be a homicide episode one day because it's a long journey to get justice for someone that you've lost. But it was a different feeling this past year going through the 6th anniversary and feeling like I had done something and I'm doing something to give back, and I want to continue to do that. So I want to thank all of you for coming on this journey with me, and here's to a season 4. And there's lots of ways that you guys can support us. Again, I want to thank all of our sponsors. Sibsforever.org. Season would not be possible without you. I want to thank Janice Jernigan again. Thank you for writing an incredible book and supporting us. You're fabulous. Grab her book on our website. Sibsforever.org. You can also find on our website. And obviously, I want to thank Nikki, our new sponsor and founding Shaitada.org, helping even more families going through tragedy. I want to thank all of you. I want to thank all of the listeners, and I want to tell you guys how you can continue to support. Obviously, like, share, subscribe, give us a great review. We appreciate all of you for doing that. We do giveaways all the time with that. You can also buy the grief guide that I was referring to. You can go right on Amazon and buy it, or you can go to our shop at thesurvivingsiblings.com. And we also have a couple new things that you can get involved in. So we have a free Facebook group that's always open. It's for surviving siblings only. We wanted to keep it intimate and a safe place for you. So you can join that. You can go right onto Facebook and type in the Surviving Siblings podcast. You'll find the group. You do have to answer and agree to the questions because we do need to ensure that you are a surviving sibling. It's a safe place to share. But all of our guests that have been on the show, they're all in that group. If they have Facebook, there's 1 or 2 that don't, but the majority of them do, and they're in that group and they connect with you. It's really cool. It creates an intimate experience. But the best way for you to support the show, of course, is if you want to come on, apply, go on our website and apply, but also buying something from our merch shop if it connects to you. Buying a book, buying a journal. That's all fabulous, and we appreciate that. And of course, I'm in my merch. If you're watching the video, I'm in my favorite, which is the sweatshirt. And we'll be coming out with a couple new phrases that you guys have requested. And whenever we're in season, we do a sale in the merch shop. So make sure you check that out. But a new thing that we've rolled out is our private support group. So if you really want to support us, continue the support of the podcast and support yourself, I would highly encourage checking out our Patreon. I'll put it in the show notes as well. Our Patreon is offering 3 different levels right now, and how you can support us. But the most popular one is our monthly support group. We have what you get for this. It's $10 a month. You get our guide for free, the digital version. You get our guide for free, which we sell already. So that's already a done deal. But then you get a private Zoom link on the last Thursday of each month. You get it that week, and it's only for our patrons to come in. And this is your time. This is your time to share. This is your time to connect with others. And I'm there to facilitate and share what you'd like me to share. But it's about you. It's about your stories. And it's a 2-hour long Zoom right now. We'll see how that grows, but I would encourage you guys to join that. You also get access to behind the scenes content. So you'll see, videos of me at the conferences, traveling, sharing my thoughts, sharing things that have gone on. Obviously, I'll share them on next season, but the video footage, live stuff, you're not going to get that. So being a patron is huge. And then we also do Ask Me Anything Mondays. So the first Monday of each month, only our patrons can look at our live stream, and I'm there and I answer all your questions. Whether you can make it or not, you have access to that for a lifetime, as long as you're an active patron, and I answer your questions. And it's going fabulous. And I just want to thank all of you that have joined the support group. The support group, just a disclaimer, is not recorded because it's confidential. Everything you share is confidential, and that's something that we have all of you agree to. But if you want to connect outside of the group, absolutely go for it. So if you want to support us, those are the ways you can support us and help us go straight into season 4. We are just beyond humbled. And when I say we, I mean me and the people that have worked on this with me. But ultimately, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to all of you. And I want to continue to share stories of siblings who have lost siblings to inspire all of you into hope, into knowing that you can move forward. You can do this. You've got this. And we're here. We're creating more and more resources every single day. And I love all the authors that are coming out, all of the other podcasts, all of the other support groups, just different things for different people that have gone through loss. It's incredible. And I love to see this growing. So I will see you guys in season 4. If you're a patron, you'll see me throughout that as well. And I'll see you guys on social media. Don't forget to follow us. The handles are coming at the end of this. And again, thank you for an incredible 3 seasons. I cannot wait till the 4th one. Until then, keep on surviving, my surviving siblings. Thank you so much for listening to the Surviving Siblings podcast. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did creating it for you, then share it on your chosen social media platform. And don't forget to tag us at Surviving Siblings Podcast so that more surviving siblings can find us. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Surviving Siblings Podcast. All links can be found in the show notes, so be sure to check those out too. Thank you again for the support. Until the next episode, keep on surviving, my surviving siblings.